our guys will ramble.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Draymond, corner three. Rimmed it out.
14 threes attempted by Draymond Green.
But he held back. He ran all the way back to Draymond, saved it. And Looney denied. He was fouled. But Draymond Green, what a sprint to save the day defensively. Shed gets a running start. Butler saved the day. Butler with a block. They found Butler in the backcourt. Jamal Shed thought he was wholly free, and then the Butler did it.
Yeah, some big-time defense from the Golden State Warriors. Defense and hustle, the order of the week as we welcome in here. It's Just Dubs, JD, John Dickinson. Happy Saturday to everyone. 10 a.m. until 11, the Giants game, their final game down in the desert, moved up an hour so everybody can get out of there. And Giants baseball heading back to Northern California and to the Bay here over the course of the next couple of days with the opening day, at least for the Giants and across the league, on the road coming up here now in less than a week. Hard to believe, 5 days away from opening day across the majors. So truncated edition here of Just Dubs for the next hour. We've got Kyle Haar in our San Francisco studios. As always, we got a busy day of Warriors coverage here today on the Sports Leader, as we have here for the last few weeks with Just Dubs, and then we give way to the Giants, and then we're back again tonight. Look for us right around 6:30 on YouTube and Twitch and on KNBR over the air as the Warriors tip off this lengthy 6-game road trip, as they will be in Atlanta and going to have to figure out, at least for tonight and maybe for a couple of games, what they're going to do without Stephen Curry, who was ruled out officially yesterday before the Warriors headed on this trip. And so we'll keep everybody updated on what's going on with Steph. MRI indicating a pelvic contusion, but no structural damage. He didn't travel with the team yesterday to Atlanta. Not playing tonight. Going to be reevaluated again on Monday. And again, you look at the nature of this Warriors trip. They play tonight, and then they get a couple of days off before playing in Miami, and then they get a couple of days off before they go on and play the Pelicans. And then really from that point on, once they start up here, the nice little break, which I think it would make it, if the Warriors wanted to and the medical staff thought it was the best thing, make it smart to maybe give Steph not only tonight, but Tuesday off to get him a full week to rest and recover. But then it's really go time. But all eyes obviously going to be on the game Tuesday, as it is the Jimmy Butler return game, and really some winnable games for the Warriors at the beginning of this trip. We'll get into that here. But it is a busy day of Dubs coverage. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 for the next hour. And then back again tonight at 6:30. We'll give way to Kerry Crowley, who's got Giants pregame coming up at 11. And then we got Giants baseball on into the afternoon. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch, as always, as people file in here for Just Dubs on a Saturday. A lot of the regulars starting to file in. We'll get to our Just Dubs edition of Kyle's Clicks here over the course of the next hour. But really, a few things to get into to just start the show as we kind of look back at the last week and some of the storylines for the Warriors. Really a grinder type week. And the Warriors, I think last week we were discussing how they've shown different ways that they can win games. And I think they did that to a certain extent this week, but really this week was more about the defense. If you look at grinder win against the Knicks, and then whatever happened in the game against Denver, I think that the Warriors due for a clunker, the Nuggets not playing Nikola Jokic, not playing Jamal Murray, and the Warriors with a letdown. I think, that game went from being a showdown type game to a letdown game, to almost an immediate trap game. And the Warriors played like it. I think if there's one thing the Warriors have kind of battled through this week in a couple of these games, I think it was on display in the Toronto game. And one thing that I think you have to file away here is as this team continues to move forward, as much as they've been able to be effective without Steph Curry, 7-3 record in 10 games that Steph has missed, as much as the Warriors did get an impressive win against Milwaukee on Tuesday with Steph out, this team and Jimmy Butler leading the way with Draymond and the defense and everything. But if this team, I think, as we look back and kind of transition to looking ahead a little bit, defense has become, and grit and grime has kind of become the identity and continued to become the identity of this Warriors team. But I think the other thing, to a lesser extent, that started to seep in, and I don't want to say become part of the identity of this Warriors team, but I think as they continue to have confidence, especially when they're close to full strength, as they continue to have confidence that they are a damn good team that has some pretty significant expectations and or possible ceiling here, it's the letdown type games that I think are a little bit problematic. As much as the identity and the DNA and all of those things are good and bode well big picture, this still is very much a team that's trying to fight their way to get into the playoffs, whether it's the 6 seed or higher, and avoid the play-in tournament, which the Clippers are hot. Minnesota's cooled a little bit. But if the Warriors don't continue winning games, they're going to find themselves 7-8 very quickly. And the schedule, at least on paper, sets up for the Warriors to get some wins here. And potentially, well, if you know me at all, you know that I don't consider any game without Steph Curry or Jimmy Butler a gimme for this Warriors team. We've already seen it with Jimmy Butler 3 weeks ago in Philly. The Warriors played one of their worst games and basically looked like the team that they had been in the 51 games before the Jimmy Butler trade. Now, the Steph thing's a little weird. The 7-3, I'm not sure how you explain that. But to tie it all together here, the one thing that this Warriors team really cannot afford to have in the time that Steph Curry's out, whether that's just tonight, whether that's tonight and Tuesday, whether it winds up being 3 or 4 games of this trip, whatever it winds up being for the Warriors, they can't afford without Steph Curry to have letdowns. They have to, as Jimmy Butler III said the other night, have to play almost perfect basketball in an attempt to win some of these games. And you feel better about the Warriors winning some or most or potentially all of these games, at least all on paper going into them. I'm not saying they're going to win all of them. Let's say they have to play 4 without Steph. How many do you win? Even at Atlanta, at Miami. And Jimmy Butler's going to want the game in Miami. I think the Warrior players are going to want the game for Jimmy Butler in Miami. But they also are going to have a couple of nights off in Miami before that game. And then the Pelicans game, they're going to have a couple nights off in Miami after that game before they go and play New Orleans coming up on Friday. So it's going to be interesting to see the pull, push-pull there as to the focus and intensity level surrounding this team. Because they have really 2 of the 4 games over the course of the last week, and Steph was playing in both of them. So maybe this doesn't necessarily happen when you have the team basically at full strength. But they let down against Denver, and it cost them. They let down, I think, a little bit against Toronto, believing that they could win that game with a good stretch or just a couple of good stretches. Not a lot of defense in the first 3 quarters. And then a hell of a lot of defense and hustle and the big block from Jimmy Butler. I mean, Draymond and Jimmy have just built this. They have become a defensive force, unlike any duo really in the NBA currently, and it's helped transform this team to where they're hot in a lot of these close games. And the Warriors had not been winning a lot of these close games, but they're on a little bit of a mini heater during the time that Jimmy Butler's been on the squad in close games. Why? It's been because of defense as much or more, really almost completely because of the defense, as opposed to big shots and offensive execution and those kinds of things down the stretch in a lot of these games. They had a letdown, though, against Toronto, and it almost bit them. So you can't have the letdown of believing now that you're a contending type team or very close to being a contending type team in the Western Conference, and then also believing that you can just show up and roll the ball out and win. Because if you do that on the road, you might get beat. And we've already seen the Warriors do that on the road a couple of times. Now that they did it in Chicago, even in Jimmy Butler's first game, they did it in Brooklyn. And so we'll see. I think the Warriors are going to have to try to fight through some of that. And again, some of it's natural, some of it's human nature. You would hope the games that they play without Steph Curry, maybe they don't necessarily view it in the same way, and they can come out and be focused and be intentional. Because again, as much as this team's got it dialed, I think the one thing that Thursday night really showed us, when Steph goes down and nobody knows how serious it is, and the early returns are that it's going to be, maybe a couple of games, but it shows how fragile the whole thing really is. And we've seen it in games where Jimmy Butler didn't play in the one, and we've seen it in some other games where maybe the Warriors have not had the proper intent quickly enough to be able to put themselves in position to just play a really good game and get a win. So all of these games are really, really important for the Warriors here moving forward. How many can they win without Steph on this trip? I mean, I think they could win the next 4, I feel like, without Steph. They could win at Atlanta. They could win at Miami. I mean, wouldn't that be the vintage Jimmy Butler to bring the Warriors in there without Steph? And the Heat, by the way, are basically in the tanking race right now. But that's not going to be the case on Tuesday night in Miami. But the Heat are on a major, they've lost 10 in a row. They were 29-31. They are 29-41 now. Still 10th by 5 games, by the way, in the Eastern Conference. Like, they're still going to be a play-in team. Go figure. Miami is 12 under 500 and is still going to be a play-in team in the Eastern Conference because they've got a 5-game lead on the next closest team to them, which is Toronto now, who the Warriors just saw. Atlanta playing a little bit better basketball of late, but you look at the Hawks, I mean, they've been underwhelming, I think, for the most part this year. I mean, they're 3 under and 7th right now. I mean, the Hawks basically have the same record as the Mavs and the Suns, but are in the top play-in spot. I mean, there's basically 6 good teams in the Eastern Conference, and then a whole lot of between the Hawks, Magic, Bulls, Heat. I mean, gross. But the Warriors are going to be playing a couple of these teams here coming up in Atlanta and Miami that are in that glut. But you can win. I think you can win at New Orleans without Steph Curry if you have to. Pelicans have lost 8 of the last 10. They are 19-52 overall. They did beat Minnesota here within the last couple of days, and then Minnesota bounced back and beat them as they played one of those back-to-back where they same team, same city, and ended up splitting it. So, and then San Antonio, another team that while they've won a couple in a row since they shut down De'Aaron Fox, they're tanking. I mean, the tank is on for basically all of these teams. Miami's tanking; they're going to end up 10th. You've got Atlanta probably would be tanking, but somebody's got to be in that 7-8 spot in the East. And then you've got the Pelicans among the worst teams in the league. Spurs are actively tanking. So you've got some teams here that you're going to face before the final two. It's really 4 really winnable games, and then the tough 2 at the end. And this is where I think you really hope at a minimum that you have Steph Curry back for games in Memphis, which is a big one and could be as it relates to seeding, and the game against the Lakers. We'll see if LeBron James is coming back. I mean, that's still almost 2 weeks away. The Warriors on the road here beginning this trip. They left yesterday. It is a 14-day trip. They will get home late in the night on the 14th day from the day that they left to head to Atlanta yesterday, and they'll come back late on April 3rd after playing the Lakers, and then have the second of a back-to-back at home against Denver. That game 2 weeks from yesterday, basically 2 weeks from last night, the next home game for the Warriors. So a lot of games at the end there with some implications. They play Denver, they play Memphis, they play the Lakers. So winnable games, and then you've got the teams that currently sit with the Warriors 6th. You've got Memphis 5th, Denver 4, Lakers 3. And you look at it, and the Warriors are a game and a half out of 5th, 1 in the loss column. They're also a game, though, still in front of the Clippers. So the next 4, and I said the next 5 before the Toronto game, but the next 4, especially considering the fact that Steph isn't going to play in all of these games and may not play in most of them, set to be reevaluated on Monday. But the Warriors, 2 in the loss column to Denver. Denver's currently 4th, 2.5 back of 3rd, 3 in the loss column. Warriors don't have those tiebreakers as we kind of lay everything out against the Lakers or now the Nuggets. And Houston is starting to solidify themselves potentially as 2nd. So as it sits right now, I think not the matchup the Warriors would want. 6th, but the Lakers are 3rd. So right now it'd be Warriors-Lakers. Denver and the Lakers kind of going back and forth, but really it could end up with any combination 2 through 5 of Houston, the Lakers, Nuggets, and Grizzlies. And the Warriors at this point, do you want to move up? Well, I think you want to make sure you get in, but do you want to move up and move into a matchup against the Lakers? Again, it's so jumbled up that nobody's really going to be able to be cute about it. It feels like the only team that truly, I think, is comfortable saying, "Hey, let's play for the top spot you can get" is Houston. Like, I think Houston's like, let's get 2, and if I think Houston's looking at it as get 2, and then you're not gonna face the Lakers, you're not gonna face the Warriors, you're not gonna face, like, Houston's like, we'll take 2 and play the Clippers. We'll take 2 and play the Timberwolves. And not that either of those teams for them is going to be a picnic, because I think they could get beat by any of those teams. Minnesota, Clippers, Warriors. I mean, they even got not that this would happen. I mean, they even got swept by Sacramento this year. Houston did in the head-to-head. But I mean, you look at the way everything, if they're playing for 2nd, like they are not going to manipulate it. But then you've got Denver and the Lakers who might be trying to manipulate it. You've got Memphis who's held it together, but kind of also falling apart here over the last couple of weeks. They've got guys out every night, big time players out every night. And so maybe it winds up being the Warriors and Grizzlies flip flop, and the Warriors can still get the tiebreaker. But if you flip there, you're probably getting Denver or the Lakers at that point, because Houston's starting to put a hold on that. And again, I think history would tell you, if you're the Warriors, you don't want to milk this thing and dip into the play-in, even if it means you get a matchup potentially with Houston in a 2-7, because the only way you get 7 is if you win that first game. And again, the Warriors, if they end up in that, they're probably playing Minnesota, a team they've played well against, or the Clippers, a team they haven't played well against. But again, completely new era, because the Warriors haven't faced either of those teams since the acquisition of Jimmy Butler. So you kind of don't know what those matchups look like. But I think the Warriors don't want to mess around with the play-in tournament. I think that, and it's not even I think, it's I know, because the Warriors have never won a play-in tournament game. They're 0-3 in play-in tournament games. They were in that 7-8 game. Then the COVID year got beat, then got beat at home by the Grizzlies. They got walloped in Sacramento last year in a 9-10 game. Like, if you have a chance to get in, you get in. But I do think it's looking, and subject to change, right? Before this Rockets 9-game winning streak, they looked like they were going to dip to 6, and now they look like the favorite to be 2. But it's looking more and more likely, if you're the Warriors, like if you get 6 or you get 5, you're staring at Denver or the Lakers. And we'll see if those teams try to manipulate it. Nuggets are giving Jokic a break. Obviously, LeBron's been out and all of that. But the bottom line is you want to get 6 and then figure it out. And it's all too jumbled up to manipulate is the key point here, at least for another couple of weeks. Maybe you can manipulate it a little bit the final 3-4 games, but you don't know you have the luxury of manipulating it until you find yourself in, right? You need to get in where you're comfortable that you're going to get in, and then maybe you mess around with it over the final week where there's going to be a lot of games scheduled and maybe guys you want to give a rest to and all of that. So 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and take a quick timeout. Questions on the board here. How many of these next 4 can the Warriors win without Steph? Not that he's going to be out for all 4, but if he is, and if the Warriors look to play it cautious, and can Steph benefit from the rest? And who do you want to see or not see in terms of the potential first-round matchups if you're Golden State? We'll get into all of that. We'll get into the chat with some of Kyle's clicks coming back as well. The Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open. It's Just Dubs here on a Saturday on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
This is KNBR, and this is Just Dubs with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Steph to Kaminga. Steph is grabbing his back and he's laying in the lane. He is injured right now. And you got a foul. And you got to stop the game. And Curry is in major distress.
Might be tailbone. He fell pretty hard.
I think the message is going to be whether he's with us or whether he's not. Hopefully he is. But if he isn't, that's just more perfect basketball that we're going to have to play. We can't afford to turn the ball over. We can't afford to foul because we don't have the one individual that can automatically get us back into the game. But we want the guy. We want our guy with us.
All right, Jimmy Butler there post-game, and we hear the low light of the Steph Curry fall there as he got hit, knocked down. No foul call, by the way, still on that play. Again, I know a lot of folks really going in on the officiating there for the foul, and it was kind of led to a greater discussion about Steph and the whistle that he gets or doesn't get. Been getting a better whistle in the time that Jimmy Butler's been on the team, but that one definitely a miss here. And Jimmy Butler then addressing what the Warriors have to do without Steph. To me, not playing with Steph is a means to lead to greater focus. At least it should be, because as Jimmy said, the one thing that Steph Curry really helps you do is it gives you that margin for error in some of the games where the Warriors haven't had it. You know that he can work his way into. I mean, look at the two games on the road where the Warriors got down big. They got down big in Chicago. What happened? They ramped up their defense, and Steph went on a heater in the third quarter, like one of the quintessential trademark Steph Curry, hitting shots, turning around, shimmying. Like it was just and it happened in Brooklyn. And it happened in Orlando. Like he's the guy quite often on the road. He's the guy that allows for the Warriors to get back in the game. And even in some of these games where they don't play well at home, it's he's the one. Like you can get it going, but you need him to erase big parts of lead. He tends to feed off of that defensive energy, off of the crowd energy, off of those kinds of things, to where you just got to be a hell of a lot more buttoned up in these games without Stephen Curry. And turnovers and fouls. And the one thing the Warriors have really shown themselves to be comfortable in doing now is the ability to just grind out games and to win ugly. And I think with Jimmy Butler at the helm, he's used to leading teams without another superstar to win ugly. He did it in Miami for years. And I think it's interesting because now he's going to look to maybe have to do it with the Warriors, at least for today, maybe in Miami, which I think he'll have enough juice for sure to be able to try and get through and do it in that game. But maybe a couple of other games here on this trip. I think all things considered, it's if you had to have Steph miss a handful of games, you would prefer that it's this next couple 3, 4, as opposed to maybe some of the games that follow. Although again, the Warriors are 7-3 without Steph this year. Hard to explain when you look at it. I was again going through it. 2 games against the Pelicans early at Chase Center. Remember, Steph got hurt, third game of the year, and had to miss a little bit of time, about a week. And the Warriors beat the Pelicans a couple of times. They beat Houston twice, including one of those games without Draymond Green. That was the big Kuminga game. So that's 4 of the 7 right there. They beat the Rockets. So some of that's matchups, I think. Some of that's the Pelicans, though we didn't know at the time, were an awful team. But the Warriors beat them a couple of times. They played a close game against Oklahoma City the night before Thanksgiving. at Chase, lost by 4. Then they kind of gave everybody the night off against the Clippers after Christmas down in Inglewood. So that one's almost a throwaway. Like that was one of the few games. The Warriors haven't done the true punt this year a lot. In fact, they did it twice. They did it in LA. They did it at Indiana as well. So 2 of the 3 losses in the 7-3 were games where they basically gave everybody the night off, and it wasn't just Steph. They turned it into full-blown developmental games, and they beat Utah. Okay, bad opponent. And then with Jimmy Butler, they showed they could beat a pretty good team in Milwaukee. The Warriors played well in that game. I mean, I think the Milwaukee game, interestingly enough, was the game of the last week where the Warriors played the best. They played pretty well, I thought, against the Knicks. That was just kind of a rugged, defensive-oriented kind of a game. I think if there's also one thing that still has the potential to be problematic for the Warriors moving forward is just, do they quite have enough shooting? Do they just quite have enough? Like, there are games where when they struggle, it's just if they had one more guy they could go to that could knock down a shot. If they had one more guy that could bail them out a little bit offensively to keep them in a game, because there are some lineups that have a tendency to stagnate. And they're living with some pretty defensive-oriented lineups down the stretch in a lot of these games. And the Warriors, to this point, have not really gotten the offensive efficiency push from Kuminga that I think they want. They haven't gotten it in the way that I think they need it. You know, he's had some games where he scored, and we talked about it the other night. Like, Kuminga in some ways saved him. He was awful in 2 of his 3 shifts, but he kind of made up for it in the other 2 shifts, and especially when he had the 9-11 straight points there in a short period of time in the second quarter the other night. But they're just not, other than the Sacramento game, the Warriors are really not getting it from Kuminga in the way that they need to get it from Kuminga to have things flow. And so that's something to continue to monitor. We'll see if he gets a little bit more comfortable, possibly with more touches. You know, I do think now with Jimmy taking on the lead role with Steph out, it does kind of open up Kuminga and his ability to get more opportunities, basically when Jimmy's out, to look to try to score. The problem is when he does that, it just, the whole ISO Kuminga thing, when it's worked, it's in the body of the offense. And I think when it's been the ISO Kuminga thing, that's just not been something that's worked. But I think you look at the opponents, you look at Jimmy Butler's ability to lead a team, and I think it's a scenario where as long as this team comes out and knows that they can't get down early in the game, as long as they know they have to compete at the beginning of all of these games, it's the old, you're not going to win a game in the first quarter, but you can lose a game in the first quarter kind of a thing. Like, they just can't lull. You know, tonight you can't get down 29-17 tonight. You know, you might be in big trouble if that happens, because you're not going to have Steph's ability to go off for 20 and a quarter and help you get back in the game. So 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. It's Just Dubs here on this Saturday, just until 11 o'clock, and then we're back after the game, and we're going to be with you following each of these games on the trip at Atlanta, at Miami, at New Orleans, San Antonio, Memphis, at the Lakers before the Warriors are back home. And again, I think the next 4 beginning tonight, the 4 truly winnable games on this trip are going to determine just how well the Warriors will have the ability to, you know, what can they get to in terms of seeding in the Western Conference. And then it all comes down to what's been going on in the chat a lot here this morning. It's who do you want to play? What are the better matchups? You know, some people really fear Oklahoma City. Again, Oklahoma City should be feared. They're a great team having a great season. They could win the NBA championship this year. I think if you're the Warriors, you'd rather play OKC than Denver or the Lakers. That being said, I think they would feel very confident in playing OKC. Of course, it's Houston and Memphis are the two teams I think you want to play the most. Houston probably, then Memphis, I would guess. Then I think OKC. If you're ranking them, I think it probably would be OKC 3. And I've said Denver 4, Lakers 5, although you look at what Denver did to the Warriors without Jokic and without Murray going back to Monday, and I think that might put people in a little bit of a panic, so to speak, with the 9 in a row now head-to-head for the Warriors in the loss column against Denver, going all the way back to the 22 playoffs. And now they're doing it without Jokic and without Murray. Like, Gordon's a problem. Again, it goes back to that clip, Kyle, we had from a couple weeks ago where it kind of got framed as if I was saying Denver was the best. No, Denver, I still think Denver's the best matchup over the Lakers with Luka and now LeBron. But that game on Monday made me think thrice about it as to whether or not maybe I need to change my opinion on that. Let's get a couple of chats here. Erwin Kwong, great to see Erwin out at Harmonic in Thrive City on Thursday night following the Warriors and the Raptors. Matchup-wise for the Warriors, Clippers look beatable given their injuries and availability. Look, Clippers are playing great right now. Clippers are playing really good basketball. They've moved their way up to 7. They've won 8 of the last 10 and 5 in a row. I mean, they're playing well right now. And Kawhi's been on a heater. Again, that might mean he's due to not be playing. But the Clippers are not a team. I'll say this. The Clippers are not a team, if I'm the Warriors, that I'd necessarily want to play in a one-off. That in a play-in scenario, and that's where they would play, is in a play-in scenario. Nuggets are beatable via depth. Yeah, I still think the Nuggets are beatable. And again, we didn't get a chance to see it on Monday. I think we were hoping to. I think hopefully we get a chance to see it April 4th when the Nuggets are back at Chase. Although, again, that's the second of a back-to-back with the Warriors coming home off a long 2-week road trip. So do they look to rest people potentially in that game, or do they do it the night before against the Lakers? We'll see how everything shakes out. Maybe not if it's like Steph's third game back, if he has to miss the bunch of these games against the more winnable teams. But I think the Warriors were amped and ready for the Denver matchup, and then when Jokic and Murray were out, it just well, this sucks. Like I think that was a showdown that I think the Warriors at that point, 13-1 or whatever it was with Jimmy Butler, they were super excited for. And then the Lakers are a wild card matchup, LeBron and Luka. OKC 1 and 2 against the again. OKC, I think among that group would be the team that the Warriors would probably be the most comfortable with. It's interesting because as big a deal as Anthony Davis has been in the head-to-head Warrior matchups when he was a member of the Lakers, I still feel like the Lakers' ability to have LeBron or Luka on the floor at all times, one of them, that gives you fewer stretches of game action to be able to exploit if you're the Warriors. And the others have played really well. They were figuring it out. The others for the Lakers have played really well. So, again, I know a lot of Warrior fans, because of the whole no-Cal, SoCal thing, the whole beat LA syndrome, are like, nah, F that, right? Don't want that. But I think it's a scenario where, or don't mind that, probably. Never fear LeBron, right? Never admit that you're afraid of LeBron. But I don't know. LeBron, I think, is a great anchor for the Laker defense against the Warriors. They've got a lot of guys playing well. Like that's not a matchup I'd want to see. All right, let's get one more here. We'll get a few more. Let's see. LA Night Stalker. I don't see the Warriors beating the Clippers, Nuggets, Lakers, or OKC in the playoffs. Definitely not a lock. I mean, that being said, None of those series are a lock. I think the only two that I would put in the lock category would be Houston or Memphis. I'm very confident in picking the Warriors to beat Houston or Memphis. Not so sure about the rest of it. So 808 KNBR, we got a couple of texts to get to, the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. More from the chat here, as well as we get you closer to 11 o'clock, and we'll hand it off to Kerry Crowley and come back tonight 6:30-ish after the Warriors take on the Atlanta Hawks with another edition of Dubs OT. So all of that coming up right here, 808 KNBR. It's Just Dubs at JD on 104.5 and 680 The Sports Leader.
live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader, streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Just having someone that thinks the game like I do, and then obviously having the ability that Jimmy does, it's incredible. Him coming up with the block at the end of the game. He pointed straight to me. He said, I got you. I can do it too. So just having another guy like that to where you don't feel like you need to have to cover up everything. It's amazing. Lucky to have Jimmy here. He's helped take my game to another level, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, dynamic duo defensively, Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler, as we welcome you back here. Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson on a Saturday morning here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Giants baseball coming up in the 12 o'clock hour with the game. Kerry Crowley here with the Giants pregame, and talking about some big news, some unfortunate injury news for the Giants, and also they've optioned Kyle Harrison. Did not earn a spot. That's been coming, I think, for a week or two. I mean, he's not had a good spring, and others have. So I don't think that's necessarily a surprise. But Kerry's going to be all over that for you Giant heads out there that are eager to get ready for this opening day, which is finally coming up on Thursday with the Giants in Cincinnati to take on the Reds. We got the Warriors and the Hawks coming up. And Dubs OT coming up tonight as we do the double day for you here, as always, when the Dubs are playing on Saturday. We got you covered in the morning. We got you covered in the evening with Dubs OT. So join me, join Kyle Haar. We'll be back right around 6:15, 6:30 tonight following the Warriors and the Hawks on KNBR and on YouTube and Twitch as well as the Warriors begin this 6-game road trip. Atlanta and Miami, followed by the Pelicans and Spurs, Memphis, and the Lakers before the Warriors are back home. All right, we'll wrap it up with some Kyle's clicks here, but I do want to get a couple of texts. The Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line 209 weighing in. Interesting discussion, and this was something that made the Dubs OT line, I think it was Monday or Tuesday night, 209. Thank goodness KD didn't want to come back to the Warriors. Yeah, I don't think it would be going this well. I really don't. And look, KD had 42 last night. He can still really score. The Warriors, I think, still do need a little more scoring. Like if they had one more two-way wing that could shoot, I think that would basically put them over the top in terms of. And I think that's going to be the thing. And look, you've all heard me say this a lot, so I won't spend a ton of time on it here in our final 5-6 minutes. But the real question, I think, for the Warriors moving from this season to next is Kuminga that wing, or do you need to use Kuminga to get that? Kuminga is obviously not going to be that wing in terms of shooting and defense. He does it offensively in a different way. But would you be better off having a wing that does it shooting, making open shots, and defending, and being that guy that is, while he's maybe playing the 3 or the 4, he's still got a little bit more size and length to him than even Draymond, right? At 6'5", like Draymond at 6'5" versus Cam Johnson at 6'7", for example. Almost made it to the end of the show without a Cam Johnson reference, but couldn't quite do it. I think Cam Johnson's like 12 for 12 going back over the last 3 months on Just Dub shows as far as his entrance into the conversation. But yeah, I wonder. I mean, I think offensively the Warriors would be better but different, but I don't know how much better. Like, because KD, while he is somebody that will move the ball, at least he did when he was with the Warriors. Part of the reason I think he was so comfortable doing it with the Warriors is because they had established, proven stars in Steph and Clay offensively. So I think they'd really be leaning on KD offensively. The underrated aspect of Jimmy, though, is his ability to get everybody else involved. Like Jimmy Butler has made Moses Moody and Brandon Pajemski better offensive players. They were playing better before the trade for a short period of time, but the one thing we've seen with both of those guys before the trade is they would have stretches where they would be quality players and score and look like they're making a leap, and then they really weren't actually doing that. They would fall back, and what's wrong with and are they developing right? Like since Jimmy Butler's been in the fold, he's made both of those guys starters. He's made both of those guys bona fide NBA starters now. Warriors are 18-2 or whatever it is with Moody starting. Some of that was before Jimmy. Most of it's with Jimmy. And Pajemski now is somebody that's, I think as long as Jimmy Butler's here, he's going to be starting next to Steph for the foreseeable future. And it fits. It works. There's enough. He's helped their shooting, I think, because he's been able to help generate them a lot more open looks more consistently than they were getting before. Quentin Post, Jimmy Butler's made a help to make, and look, Post has been the guy making the shots at a damn near 45% clip. And he's hitting like 45, 46% of his open threes. Well, guess what? Most of his threes are open because a lot of the time Jimmy Butler's finding him in the corner, or the ball movement is finding him where he's getting great looks. So would the rest of the Warriors players be getting those great looks with Kevin Durant? I'm not sure. Kevin Durant would be getting great looks because Kevin Durant always gets great looks, but I'm not sure about the rest of it. 650, time for Kuminga to come to life. Yes, they do need some scoring from Kuminga. Again, though, they don't need Kuminga to be in takeover mode. They need Kuminga. Kuminga can have a took the game over kind of line, but it's always a fine line between, is Kuminga in takeover mode what's best for this Warriors team? Maybe. I'm a little more open to it in these games if they have to play a couple of them without Steph. All right, let's get a couple of chats here to close it out in the final couple of minutes. Andis Brown, great to hear from you, Andis. I wouldn't want to manipulate the schedule and seeding. Don't mess with the basketball gods. That sounds exactly like something Steve Kerr will say at some point here in the next 3 weeks. I think without a doubt. Enrique, guaranteed Dubs aren't thinking we want or don't want them because of matchups. F that nonsense. Yeah, I look, I think they do think it. You're never going to hear them say it. And to Andis's point, I don't think they're going to manipulate anything. I think they're going to try to get firmly into 6 first. And then again, I think the next 4 are going to determine what the ceiling is. The next 4, if you go 4-0, maybe without Steph for a couple, all of a sudden maybe 5, 4, 3 is on the table. If you split, then maybe it's just fighting at that point to make sure that you get to 6 and you take who you get. Denver, Lakers, whatever. Irwin, it could be argued that this pre-playoff rest, this is the pre-playoff rest Curry needs for the long run. Yeah, no different LeBron, Luka, and no different than Curry getting the last 6 weeks of 2022 off. But the Warriors are not in the same position. I want to caution. The Warriors were basically locked as the 3. They needed about 3 wins over the last month to make sure they were 3, and they barely got them. So let's not get it twisted, although Jimmy Butler's in the fold, so there is a little bit more margin for error there. All right, one more here in the chat. Estimated eyes. Are we all going to give me props for calling Houston a big problem next season before last season ended? Yeah, I'll give you props. I don't remember it, but I trust you. I trust you, Estimated. No, Houston was a team that didn't make the play-in even, but I think they were going to be, in the top 8 this year for sure, but all the way up to 2nd. I don't know that anybody saw that coming. And now they have the ability to go get somebody to help put them over into contender status. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks to Kyle Haar. Thanks to Raph. We'll talk to you tonight following the Warriors and the Hawks. Giants baseball coming up next right here on the Sports Leader.